It was still early morning in Ouagadougou when Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traoré received a top-secret intelligence briefing that would rock the world of international politics. His intelligence minister, Captain Gaël Sankara, walked into the room with a somber face. "Mr. President," he started gravely, "we have discovered incriminating proof of American economic interests connected with terrorist organizations active within our nation." President Ibrahim scanned the report, each page more dire than the previous. The report showed tangled money movements under shell companies, counterfeit aid contracts, and secret fund flows covered by the guise of humanitarian activities. "We have hard evidence," Captain Sankara said. "Bank wire transfers, intercepted messages, and even audio files." Ibrahim rose to the window that faced the Capitol. "If this is true, then individuals associated with President Xu are indirectly financing the same terror organizations that are murdering our soldiers." In Washington, D.C., White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt was getting ready for another run-of-the-mill briefing. Her reputation as a steadfast supporter of President Xu and an unshakable confidence person made her entirely oblivious to the whirlwind set to sweep her away. "Madam Leavitt," an aide called, "there's an international call from the president of Burkina Faso." "Burkina what?" she scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "Tell him I'm busy." But Ibrahim Traoré wasn't a man to be brushed off, especially not with damning evidence in hand. He scheduled a globally televised press conference and stood before a crowd of international journalists, the dossier held firmly in his grasp. "Today," he announced, "I reveal a network of corruption running from Washington to West Africa. We have evidence that connects top U.S. officials, including Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, to transactions which ultimately end up empowering terror factions." While Ibrahim held up the documents, bank statements, contracts, taped conversations, Karoline watched in real time from the White House, becoming visibly white with each disclosure. "This is absurd," she shouted at the screen, but her aide rushed in. "Madam, the press is demanding a statement. Calls are flooding in." "I'm not responding to some random African president," she snapped arrogantly. But the world was already watching. Ibrahim remained composed and unshaken, addressing tough questions from reporters with precision. "While our young soldiers die defending our land," he said, "officials close to the White House profit off the bloodshed." CNN's Anderson Johnson shot up a hand. "President Traoré, have you got evidence of these charges?" Ibrahim replied icily, "Yes. Bank records, audio recordings, wire transfers, all of which will be forwarded to U.S. federal officials." In minutes, the tale went viral on the internet. Burkina Faso president unmasks U.S. corruption trended globally. In Washington, pandemonium erupted. Karoline Leavitt's office phones rang continuously. Her aides frantically buzzed. "You must reply, immediately," one urged. "I won't play along with this circus," Karoline snapped, tossing papers in frustration. "This is a smear campaign to bring down President Xu." But the facts kept coming. Daily, Ibrahim uncovered more documents. Signed deals with no services provided. Offshore accounts accepting millions. Leavitt's credibility imploded quickly. Even right-wing anchors on Fox News began questioning. "This doesn't look good," one conceded on television. Republican senators called for explanations. President Xu, normally a staunch supporter of his fellow party members, started to keep his distance. Karoline acted alone. "I had no knowledge of her private transactions." Meanwhile, Ibrahim's global reputation reached new heights. Presidents from France, China, and other major world powers praised his bravery. "This isn't political," Ibrahim continued to say. "This is about terrorist networks enriching themselves, while African children are denied education and medical care." At the same time, Karoline retreated from public view. She canceled all media interviews, turned down calls, and was holed up at home in Virginia. Her attorney made half-hearted denials, but the proof was incriminating. The Wall Street Journal ran a probing investigation. CNN broadcast wiretapped calls. Pictures emerged of Karoline having lunch with convicted money launderers. Demonstrators marched around the White House with signs such as, "You funded terrorists, and Karoline must resign." Ibrahim carried on the exposé. Fresh documents showed Karoline had diverted American government money to fund private military actions in the Sahel. She's tainted the image of legitimate humanitarian organizations, he said to the BBC. Schools closed down, projects were put on ice, kids were denied supplies. This, Ibrahim asserted, pointing to photos of closed classrooms, is what corruption costs. She got richer while our youth paid the price. Karoline attempted one last desperate move, an exclusive interview with Fox News. I'm being targeted for being a young, loyal woman in politics, she cried, but it backfired. Ibrahim released another recording, this one capturing Karoline saying, "These Africans will never figure out the money trail." That one sentence detonated across the internet. Headlines read, "Racist scandal behind terror funding." Protests erupted. Americans cried out for justice. Karoline Leavitt, once a forceful voice of the administration, was on the run in her own nation. Every time she ventured outdoors, reporters mobbed her. "Karoline, what about the tapes? The bank accounts? Are you repaying the stolen funds?" She had nothing to say, nothing but silence. And in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré watched in silence as events transpired. "I don't rejoice in anyone's downfall," he informed his ministers, "but the truth must be told. Justice must prevail. The secrets weren't about to end there." Ibrahim Traoré staged another press conference, this one announcing that classified White House intelligence, highly sensitive counterterrorism plans, had leaked and been sold to businessmen who benefited from ongoing bloodshed. Each operation tainted by these leaks resulted in fatal ambushes, claiming the lives of courageous soldiers. "The blood of our troops," Ibrahim gravely announced, "was traded for money." Karoline Leavitt's position became utterly untenable. Democrats demanded a full investigation by Congress. Republicans insisted on her resignation. Even former supporters began to distance themselves. Steve Bannon, a former top White House strategy advisor for President Chu, stated flatly, "Karoline didn't just betray the president, she betrayed the nation." The woman once touted as the future of conservative leadership had now emerged as its biggest scandal. She was gone from social media in an instant, accounts suspended for disseminating disinformation and breaking terms of service. The collapse of this political celebrity was relentless and precipitous. The FBI opened an investigation. They searched her house, taking computers, files, and bank statements. What they discovered exceeded expectations. Millions of dollars routed through a massive network of offshore banks, fabricated contracts, and classified documents traded for private profit. In a press conference, the U.S. attorney stated, "This is not political theater. This is organized crime at the highest level." Ibrahim stayed calm. "Burkina Faso will cooperate fully. We stand for justice." Hopeless, Karoline bet her last hand, the victim. In a leaked video, she blamed President Ibrahim for persecuting her because she was a white American woman. The tactic blew up in her face. Ibrahim responded with another bombshell, an audio recording of Karoline disrespecting Africa. "Those people won't even understand how to follow the money," she guffawed. "Africa is nothing but dust and suffering." The response was swift and merciless. Protests broke out all over the U.S. and Europe. Civil rights organizations, politicians, and even right-wing commentators criticized her. Her statement had validated what people dreaded. This wasn't corruption alone. It was based on racism. President Chu, under intense pressure, finally took action. In a curt social media post, he stated, "Karoline Leavitt has been fired. Her behavior does not represent the values of this administration. The harm was done. Her accounts were shut down, her reputation destroyed, and her name permanently tainted. Once one of the most influential voices in the White House, she was now unemployable, undesirable, and being watched by federal authorities." Neighbors had reported agents around her house. She was thoroughly cornered. She could not tolerate the humiliation and the threat of prosecution anymore. She had a desperate idea: escape. "I can't live like that," she said to her lawyer. "I need to get out of the country." Marcus Thompson cautioned her, "Karoline, running away will only aggravate the situation." But she would not listen. With fake documents purchased on the black market, she tried to take a flight to Canada. Federal agents were at Dallas International Airport waiting for her. "Karoline Leavitt, you are not allowed to leave the country," one informed her. as the arrest was filmed live. The photographs went around the world. The ex-White House press secretary, once confident and influential, now handcuffed like any ordinary felon. Ibrahim followed the news with resolute calm. "Justice is being served," he informed his ministers. "Let this serve notice to all corrupt officials. No one is above the law." Karoline Leavitt was the global face of corruption. Universities used the scandal in ethics classes. Ibrahim Traoré's moral leadership was a model for the world. Karoline was denied bail. Considered a risk for flight, she was committed to federal prison, where she would stay until her trial. Her aspirations to conservative greatness had come to an end in shame. In her cell, she looked back at the decisions that had led her here. Arrogance, greed, betrayal. Across the sea, President Ibrahim was still leading with conviction. His decisive action had not only defended Africa, but the very democracy of America as well. 3 months later, the trial started. The courtroom was filled with journalists and overseas monitors. The proof was staggering: papers, tapes, wire transfers. Even former co-workers testified against her. "I used to hear her discussing investments in Africa," said one former aide, "but she never said what they were actually for." At last came the verdict. The voice of the judge boomed through a hushed courthouse. "Defendant Karoline Leavitt, you are guilty on all charges: treason, money laundering, conspiracy, and the funding of terrorism. Your acts were not only against this nation, but against humanity." The verdict: 45 years in prison without parole. As the gavel came down, Ibrahim watched the telecast. He nodded once. "Let this motivate other leaders," he said, "to bring corruption where it lurks." The international reaction was staggering. Nations initiated their own probes. French officials found connections between Karoline's companies and Somali terror organizations. German banks froze related accounts. Money laundering syndicates in Asia collapsed. Training camps closed. Terror financing went dry. Ibrahim Traoré had not only uncovered corruption, he had aided in the dismantling of global terrorism's apparatus. Karoline, now inmate number 001147, observed the ruins from a prison chow line. She once shone on the world stage, but now stood in line for lunch, robbed of her fame. President Chu, attempting to regain his reputation, stated, "I barely knew her." Even though there were dozens of photos of them together, he denied knowing her. Ibrahim, nonetheless, was cheered. He was unanimously elected as President of the African Union. His swearing-in ceremony was televised around the globe. "Africa," he said, "will no longer tolerate being treated as second-rate. We can do it. We stand together. We will combat corruption with integrity." The world would never forget what happened. The tale of how a young African president brought down one of America's brightest new political stars became legend. And Karoline Leavitt, the woman who once scoffed at Africa, became the best example of what it means when you underestimate the power of a continent and the cost of corruption. If this news surprised you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe for more wake-up calls the world needs to know.